All right, everybody. This is Jeremy Roberts. We're here for the weekly intake. I am super excited to be here today. I'm going to do a quick intro of kind of the topic, and then we're going to have a great conversation. Um, so the weekly intake, typically for those of you who come, we have 4 or 5 talent acquisition practitioners who sit and casually talk about the week, and then kind of focus in on a few topics. Today is going to be a little bit different. I've got Jason Hernandez here with me. And there aren't a lot of people like Jason, and I wanted to really dive deep into his story. So I didn't want to have too many people on today. So our topic today is second chance hiring. And Jason has a very unique perspective on the topic. And so we're going to dive into that. So real quick, my name is Jeremy Roberts. I'm with Heiser Talent. We're a consulting firm focusing in on HR and talent acquisition, much heavier on the talent acquisition side than the HR side. I've spent the last 20 plus years in talent acquisition and recruiting. So now, like I said, Jason has a super unique experience. I'm excited for him to be here today. Jason, really quick, if you could kind of do a brief intro, and then we'll kind of go into your background and what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, when you say brief intro,
Yeah, let me guide you because it's pretty. It's he's got a big story, you guys. Okay, so Jason and I know each other we both grew up in McKinney, Texas. So I moved there in junior high school, and then I graduated. And if I'm not mistaken, I was in a class right between Jason and one of his brothers. So his brother was 1 year older than me. Jason was 1 year younger. We had a lot of mutual friends. Um, McKinney was really small back then, and it was very diverse. For me, it was one of the more diverse communities I had lived in. And so we all knew each other really well, and we all interacted with each other, and it was a unique experience for me. But we're talking about second chance hiring, and the reason is Jason's got a special story around this. And I'll let him go into the details, but he was arrested in his teens and received life without parole plus a bunch of years, and I'm sure he'll get into that with us. And then was able to receive clemency and a pardon eventually, and has re-entered the workforce and is now doing great things in McKinney where he had previously been. So second chance hiring, why are we going to talk about this on our call today? I come from the sourcing side of recruiting, and everybody's always trying to find new talent pipelines. Everybody's trying to create a more diverse pipeline. Everybody is trying to fill jobs and take care of the business, right? The other side of the equation here is helping people re-enter society who have paid their debt to society. And so there's a social impact of this conversation, and then there's the business impact of why it's good business, right? And so we're going to talk about both of those things. Just real quick on second chance hiring, just some numbers. There are over 600,000 people returning from incarceration each year in the United States. Employers are facing major talent shortages, but they overlook this talent pool, right? It's not charity. It's a proven talent strategy. So who's doing it well? You got Dave's Killer Bread, Slack, the technology company, Mod Pizza, Total Wine, and JP Morgan have all documented really successful second chance or fair chance hiring programs. And so in a future conversation, I want to get really into the talent acquisition side of this. And I'm working on a show that we'll do within the next couple of weeks that will have representatives from these companies talking about outcomes and how they implemented these programs. But what you'll hear universally when you research them is higher retention of employees. People are so thankful they're there and they are loyal, and productivity, right? They work hard, right? Those are the first key outcomes that you'll hear in all of these. So we'll get into those kind of results in more depth in future shows. But right today we're gonna keep going with Jason. All right, Jason. So tell us your story. I know you've told it a bunch, right? How would you kind of intro this call? Tell us the basics.
Well, I think it's, I guess when you look at my story, you see the opportunity and the chances that can happen with somebody that's been in a situation that I've been in, where I was incarcerated. And when I was incarcerated for an extremely long time, nearly 18 years of my life, and I went away at a very young age. So, I kind of had that maturity level I had to attain while I was incarcerated. But as you mentioned, I mean, when I grew up, I mean, I was just like every other kid in McKinney, where, my dreams were graduating, winning the World Series, going to the moon, being a fireman. And just, I think based on what was around me, those aspirations changed when I was around 13, 14, where I actually wanted to be a drug dealer. And I knew in my head, I had this vision that I was, at the age of 21, I was either going to be dead or incarcerated. And at the age of 21, I was sentenced to life without parole, plus 320 years for nonviolent drug offenses. And not to speak highly of that behavior that I did, because it was totally wrong, and I'm trying to make up for that even now to this date. But when you look at somebody who was a drug dealer or was a drug dealer, you're doing a lot of things that people do in businesses. You're marketing, you're packaging, distribution, networking. You're having to, especially when it comes to decision making and conflict resolution, it's like an extremely high level. So I was doing all that at a very young age, at the age of 15, 16 years old, and a lot of other individuals in my community were as well. As I just said, for that behavior, I was sentenced to an extremely long length of time. And while I was incarcerated, I, educated myself. Unfortunately, when I had my life sentence, they kind of restrict you from programs that you can take, because they kind of tell you this is for people that are getting out of prison. Like, they have welding programs, plumbing, electrical, CAD. You can even get a college degree in there. But when you have a life sentence, it's like you can't take it. So it was hard for me to start taking programs in there, but I was able just to, I knew a lot of the prisoners that taught them, because at the end of the day, the prisoners teach the programs. And I was able to get my paralegal studies certification, welding certification, culinary arts degree. And I think that was all I was able to take during that time. But during I became a jailhouse attorney as well. I taught myself how to do habeas corpus, file 2255s, 3582C2s, Rule 60Bs. And I would say I was a well-known jailhouse attorney in the federal system. And but unfortunately, I wasn't able to, how would you say, find any ways to get out of my sentence through the criminal justice system. But through that knowledge, I was able to gain, just a wealth of what I thought that the president would want to know about me or want to hear about me. So I was able to create a petition, send him a letter asking him to release me from prison. I sent that.
And this was Obama. This was Obama.
Yes,
right?
President Obama. This was in September 23rd, 2011. I sent him a letter asking him to release me, and showed him some of the programs that I was involved in, and a program that I had created already that I wanted to come back to East McKinney, where I'm at, right now, and prevent the other kids from thinking how I thought and how my brothers and friends thought about, all I could do is be a drug leader or a gang member in my future. My scholarship was going to be to the penitentiary, not to a college. And December 19, 2013, he answered my prayers, and he reduced my life sentence plus 320 years down to 20 years. Went in 1998. I came out in 2015. So did about 18 years I came out when I was about 39 years old. So yeah, just again, a lot of that skill set and experience that I learned in the streets while I was incarcerated, I believe helped me attain my freedom, and has helped me maximize my potential that I didn't know that I had inside, and which I'm trying to do now for our kids in this community.
All right. No, that is awesome, you guys. So It's crazy. Like when people think about McKinney in the 1990s. I mean, there were under 30,000 people, but it was just north of Dallas. So the amount of activity that was going on there is actually shocking, right? And so, how many people were arrested with you from our little town? How many people were
Yeah.
involved in that?
Yeah, so there was who they indicted was 37 individuals. 35 were from McKinney. I would say 33 of them were African Americans and Latinos. There was two that were Caucasian, and I was charged as the leader organizer of the drug distribution ring from 1992 up until 1998. So from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20 to 21, they said that I ran this operation. And I'm not gonna say that they say. I mean, I did. I'm not gonna. Wasn't innocent.
Right, right.
Do that.
Yeah. All right. Now, all right. So I'm going to jump into kind of the something I think is just such a cool story. Tell everybody about La Tiendita and why that's important to you. So tell them about the location and what you've accomplished there.
Well, La Tiendita is a nonprofit grocery store, but I tell people we're more than a store. We're a resource and empowerment center for the community. And it's actually 2 blocks from where I was born and raised. My brothers were born and raised as well. And it was a hangout corner for about 30, 40 years. So it was a store that gave internships on, well, just for example, that's where I smoked my first joint at, my first cigarette, drank my first beer, my Boone's Farm, my Mad Dog 2020. I drank it at this store, learned how to fight at this store. First time I saw somebody shot was at this store. So for 30, 40 years, it was a really, really tough place. It was probably one of the worst places in McKinney, not just East McKinney. And when I came out, we were able, through our nonprofit, just to attain the property, and we turned it into a nonprofit grocery store. It's for profit, but it's a social enterprise where all the profits go back into helping out the community. So it was a food desert. East McKinney is one of the biggest food deserts in Collin County. And now that store, like, we don't sell cigarettes, we don't sell alcohol, lottery tickets, or anything just negative. We provide access to healthy and affordable food options. We give discounted rates to people here in the community. We take EBT and WIC and other food assistance programs like that. But at its core, we help the kids in the community. We do internships from kids that are 7 years old all the way up to 18 years old. And we teach them social skills, etiquette, financial management, conflict resolution, decision-making, workforce development. And we try to find out what these kids' talents are, what their gifts are, what they were put on this earth for, and then show them how to maximize that potential, how to create a career at it based on that. But then also, how do you use that talent to give back to the community?
No, that's amazing. So, so yeah, a little connection piece.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think you're probably going to ask me the question. I'll let you ask me the question.
No, what were you going to say?
So the other thing about this store, well, one of the other things that we try to do is prevent our kids from going to prison or getting arrested in the first place. You know, right now in Texas, 51% of the juveniles in our justice system are Latino. 1 out of every 6 Latino kids born today, 1 out of every 4 African-American kids born today are expected to go to the prison system. So we try to prevent that before it happens. But the other thing about La Tiendita was at the age of 15, when I sold my first dime bag of marijuana, I sold it at La Tiendita. And I stood there for like 18 months, you know, day in, day out, rain, sleet, or snow, 100 degrees or 20 degrees, out there hustling, trying to make money. And, you know, I tell people now that store, we went from pushing dope to now pushing hope.
Oh, that's good. Good line. That's awesome. Now, so the way that this conversation happened, actually, my mother is one of his volunteers, and so I was actually over visiting with her one day, and Jason and I started talking and catching up. But yeah, so now Jason, who we all kind of knew as a little bit kind of a tough guy in school, is hanging out with my mom. You guys, that's a full rotation, right? Now, all right. So something I asked you, like, and I think a lot of people are scared of people when they come out of the system. right? So one thing about Jason, everybody, when you're with Jason, he's very peaceful, he's very centered, he's got a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, right? When did that change for you, right? You were there for 20 years. I'm assuming you went in pretty angry and not the way you came out. So talk a little bit about that transformation. Like when did the what we know in you when we see you, the gentleness and the hope, when did you start to kind of feel that?
Yeah. Well, and just to make mention, we had like one of our interns wasn't able to show up today, and we're doing interviews for our leadership program. So we had like an emergency spot that we had to fill at the store, and your mother is actually going to be here today.
Nice. Go mom.
So that's
Yo, mom. Yeah, Jason and my mom were on the news together, and my mom, they were doing a petition to get, so we'll talk more about this. Jason got clemency, but he didn't get a full pardon. And he recently got pardoned by Biden in the fall. And so when they were doing the petition, my mom was on the news with him and they interviewed her and she cried. I have seen my mom cry, I don't know how many times, I can count them, right? But yeah, it was a great news story. I think it won an Emmy. But anyway, so no, that's amazing. But when did you start to kind of feel that change happen, or was it quick, or was it?
No, yeah, it took well, I would say I don't believe that, there's no such thing as kids, like there's no such thing as a bad kid, right? It's just kids, make bad decisions, and it shouldn't cost us our life or the rest of our life in prison. So when I went to prison, I went to a maximum security penitentiary, and I think even though I was involved in drug dealing and things to that extent, I think if you were to ask people, they would tell you just kind of what you just said right now, that I was a pretty self-centered person. I was a reasonable person. But when I went to that maximum security penitentiary, I did have to kind of put this mask on because I was around very violent individuals, real drug dealers, real kingpins, real terrorists. And for those first 4 or 5 years, yeah, and I was pretty angry at the system. I blamed everything that happened to me on the system, which was the wrong way to think at that time. So I was in there. I was still selling marijuana. I was carrying knives. I was fighting. I was doing everything that you would probably typically see or imagine that would go on in a prison. And it wasn't until 2002, because my older brother, JJ, he was incarcerated as well. And he was doing 30 years in TDC, the Texas Department of Corrections. I was in a federal prison. And March 28th, my older brother, JJ, he was murdered by 3 other prisoners. And just the lowest part of life that I think one could possibly be in. And I was mad. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the system. I was angry at prisoners, angry at people in McKinney, for the community, because I was thinking, how could y'all just forget and abandon a part of town like this and not invest in it? And it was going to take my life. I was going to commit suicide. And about 8 days after my brother passed, I just, got up out of my bed and just having this going back to my childhood, growing up in East McKinney, because East McKinney is a very beautiful part of town. It always has been. And thinking about one of my teachers that used to tell me, you know what, Jason, you could do so much for the community. You weren't born to be a drug dealer. And I just remember, she told me that back in 1993. And here I am, nearly 10 years later, in the darkest spot that you can be in life or even on earth. And that seed that she planted actually blossomed at that moment. Never thought about it until that time. And I just remember getting out of my bed and looking in my metal mirror. And, I was mad. I was angry. I was so upset. I was sad. But just made a declaration. I said, you know what? I wasn't born to be a drug dealer. I wasn't born to be a prisoner. My brother wasn't born to be killed in prison. My son wasn't born to be raised without his father. And starting right now, I'm going to make a declaration to my brother and to the Lord that somehow, some way, I'm going to get out of prison. I know it's not going to be tomorrow, next week, next year. I know it's going to take years, if not decades. But I know that if I give that same passion and that same commitment and declaration that I did to wanting to be a big time drug dealer, that I had no doubt in my mind that I would get out. But then I also made a declaration that I was going to come out and change and save not just one or two, but thousands of lives. Didn't know how I was going to do that either. But I believe that if I just stay true to those two commitments, that the world, that the universe, that the Lord would show me how to do that. But I had to do my part as well.
No, that's great. I have to ask because I'm from McKinney. Do you ever say the teacher's name?
Yeah, it was Charlotte Jaggers.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I never had Miss Jaggers, but I know exactly. I know her, so that's amazing. All right, now, all right. So, what? One of the things that in HR we talk a lot about, like disparate impact, and so we talk about how institutionalized ways of behaving or processing information have led to discrimination. And I think that was a lot of your case, that you made to Obama. Can you kind of describe what was going on, how people of color were receiving life sentences and others were not? Can you go into that? I know I didn't prep you for that part of the conversation, but you mentioned it earlier, and we've got a lot of HR people here, so I think they would be interested in that piece of how you got the government's attention.
Yeah, well, I think and studies show this. This is not just something that I've came up with just out of my mind, but studies show that crimes, whether it's drug dealing, drug use, is committed at the same rate amongst African Americans, Latinos, and Caucasians. There's just as many drugs as there are on army bases or in colleges as there are in communities of color. The only difference is that Hispanic communities, African American communities, we're more likely to be pulled over, be detained, be arrested, more likely to be charged, more likely to be convicted, and for the same crime that a African American or a Latino commits as a white person, we're more likely to receive more time, if not double the time, than they are for the exact same crime. So, I mean, that's why in the United States, Latinos and African Americans make up less than 1/3 of the population, but in prison, we make up over two-thirds of the population. And in some prisons and in some southern states like Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, we make up over 80% of the inmate population.
Yeah, and I think all of those different stages and statistics, I think political climates change. I think the most important one, that regardless of the external political climate, the one that is most important is that cannot be disputed, is the length of sentence for the same crimes. And I think that was one that you were able to really highlight. And that led to Obama, what did you call it? Commuting your sentence, right? That's clemency, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so Jason gets out. Tell us about so after you tell the story, I do want to talk about, there's clemency and then there's a pardon, right? But before we do that, let's talk about your experience when you got out. What's it like re-entering the workforce? I love that story that you told me the other day, and kind of how you were eventually able to get over those hurdles. So kind of go into that real quick.
Yes. Well, when I was incarcerated, obviously I seen, tons of people, be released, and I seen tons of people come back. And, obviously I was close to a lot of these individuals, and every time they would come back, when I would see them for the first time, you could see that they put their head down, they'd get sad because they would have to come talk to me, someone who doesn't have a release date and someone had a second chance and came back less than 2-3 months later, 6 months later. And they would walk up to me and they would just say, "Man, Jason, I'm sorry, man. I made a mistake out there, but it kind of wasn't my fault. Like it's tough out there. You don't understand." And I'd say, "No, it's no big deal, man. Things happen." But in the back of my mind, I would say, "Man, if I were to get out there, like there's no doubt in my mind I would succeed. Like I would make it. Like they're saying that they can't get jobs and things. I was like, I would get me a job without a doubt." So obviously, being able to persuade or convince the president to release me out, running a drug distribution ring at the age of 17, I thought, man, if I get out, like there'll be plentiful of
Just
jobs
start a
for
new
you.
business. Yeah, just
Yeah,
find a legal business. Yeah.
yeah, like that'll be. And then I have training already. When I went to prison, I didn't have any actual skill sets, technical. But now I know how to do paralegal work. I know how to weld. I know how to cook. And I would just work anywhere. Like, just give me a job at McDonald's. I'll just be happy to work anywhere, dude. I'm just happy to be free. And so, I get out, and then the first thing, all the applications are online now, and I don't know anything about a computer. I remember going to Whole Foods in Park Lane. They have a Whole Foods there, and just walking up to the cat. I'm looking for the manager, and I don't see nobody. And I asked one of the persons that's a cashier, and I said, "Hey, my name is Jason Hernandez. I'd like to speak to the manager." And he said, "Well, why do you want to speak to him for?" So I want to apply for a job, and he goes, "Oh no, you don't speak to the manager for a job. You apply over there." And I looked, and I said, "There's nobody over there." And he goes, "The computer." And it was just, I'm not going to say it was similar to someone on death row walking, but man, I walked to that computer and I was just kind of like terrified. And I just looked at it for about 30, 40 minutes, and I was acting like I was pushing buttons, but didn't know what I was doing. Then I started getting assistance on that and fill out applications online. Nobody would call me back. I filled out maybe a couple of dozen and just never heard back from nobody. Then I was able to, leave the halfway house to, journey out into the free road, as we call. And I said, and then people were telling me like, "Hey, nobody's going to call you. Nobody's going to call you or respond back because you're a felon." And I was thinking in my head, well, what does that actually mean? I mean, it's a nonviolent crime. I thought that, I don't have a bunch of tattoos on my face or things like that. I don't think I've appear menacing. So I felt that if I just went to go speak to people, they would, look past my incarceration, my charges, and say, "Yeah, you know what? I'm going to give you a chance." So, I go to a couple of job interviews, and, just kind of just like walk into the place and just, "Hey, I filled out an application. I would like to talk to somebody," and didn't check the felony box to an extent. And then, I remember my first interview, the guy, it was a welding job, and he's like, "Oh, you put kind of, will explain on your, on the felony. What does that mean?" "Well, I was incarcerated." I didn't tell him I was incarcerated. I said, I was arrested for drug dealing. And he looked at it and he was like, "Oh, well, everybody does drugs nowadays. That's no big deal." And he goes, "Oh, you don't have any work history?" Because remember, I went in when I was 21 and I came out when I was 40. Like, I had never really had a job. And I said, "Well, sir, I was incarcerated." And, his kind of relaxed demeanor, he just sat back in his chair and he was like, "You were incarcerated?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he looks and he goes, "What, for 20 years? And I said, "Almost 18. And then his eyes got real big and he even pushed back more. And he's like, "Man, I can't hire you here." Because I was like, it's a nonviolent crime though, sir. He's like, "Nah." He goes, even if whatever it is, he goes, "If my employees find out or the customers find out, they won't come to work no more. They'll be scared to be around you." And so it was just, over and over, just that was basically the same. And what was so crazy about it was that they didn't really kind of care that I was poisoning my community and had, nearly 14 federal convictions for it. It was the fact that I was incarcerated. That was some of them did.
They could get over the actual act that you did.
Yeah, like
It's
that
the
was like
stigma. Yeah.
my crime was being incarcerated to them. And I get that they see these movies and they hear, they watch the news and everything that kind of highlights this negativity about prisons. And so that just kept happening. And I had 17 days to get a job because I was at the halfway house. And if you don't get a job within 17 days, they can violate you and send you back, even though nobody wants to hire you. And you have to pay rent there. If you don't pay rent there, they can violate you. So if you're not paying rent because nobody will hire you, they can still violate you. So I'm on the train system one day, and then I go to this other interview, and it's a welding job as well. And I don't know what to do. So I take a Time magazine that I was in, and I take my actual executive order that the president gave me. So when it says check the box, because everything says, "Have you been convicted of a felony?" And I put "will explain." And I was like, man, maybe if I take this, they'll understand. And the
So
lady,
by the way, they called you like Obama's Mexican, right? And you got a lot of press because it was on the way out, right? I mean, so you had press that others don't have.
yeah, I had press. I mean, I was in Time magazine, which at that time magazines were still a big deal, right? So
Right, right.
I'm on Time. I'm on Time magazine. There's my pictures in there of me while I'm incarcerated. So I take that with me, and I take my presidential order from the president. So the lady comes out and she goes, "What do you mean when you say you'll explain that you have a felony?" And I didn't say nothing. I just gave her the Time magazine and I gave her my executive order. And she started reading and she started crying. And she goes, "Hold up real quick." And then she goes to the back and three other ladies come out and they're crying and they're shaking my hand. They're hugging me and they're like, "Congratulations. We're so happy for you." And the lady said, the first lady that was there, she said, "You know what, Mr. Hernandez, my brother was incarcerated. And when he came out, nobody wanted to give him a chance. And a business did hire him. Now he's like the manager there. He was able to buy a house, buy a car. He's married and he has kids because somebody gave him a chance, and we're going to give you a chance." And she goes, "The only thing that we need is your driver's license." And I hadn't drove a car for about 20 years, and I didn't know how to drive a car. So I was immediately hired and then immediately fired with that. So that, but then, and then when I got back on the train to go back, just feeling very defeated, going back to the halfway house, I seen some guys on there who I assumed had been incarcerated. And one guy had a welding helmet. And I said, "Hey, man, are you a welder?" And he goes like, "Yeah, I'm a welder." And he goes, "They're hiring if you know how to weld." I said, "Yeah, I am, but I'm a felon." And he was like, "That's all they hire." He's like, "All they hire is felons and people who are here undocumented." But what I learned is that they hire people who are felons and undocumented, and they pay us lower wage. The safety standards are at a very low standard. So people are there getting hurt, and they use that against you because they know they can treat you a certain way. And if you stand up for yourself, not stand up to where you fight, but if you just say, "These are my rights and I deserve them," they'll call the halfway house and make a false allegation against you that will violate you and send you back to prison. So that was actually my actual first job in that type of environment.
Wow. Okay. So you got one, but it was a horrible, horrible
Yeah.
environment. So, but
Mhm.
it got you on your feet, and then you just kind of started transitioning into other roles then.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Now, all right. So there's so much to unpack here. Now you see why I don't have too many people with us today. Now, so you have let's go back to the conversation. So you got clemency, but you did not have a pardon. So what did that mean, kind of being in that phase?
Yeah. Well, so obviously when I was incarcerated, I did have these dreams and aspirations. Even though I had certifications in culinary arts and welding, I had thought about, man, I would love to be a teacher. I would love to be an attorney, and just not thinking it fully. So, when you come out and you start exploring those options in the state of Texas, you can't be an attorney if you have a felony conviction, whether it's state or federal. You definitely can't work at a school if you have a felony conviction.
Mhm.
So even though I think I was qualified to do both of those jobs, I was wanting to go to college as well, but just killed my dream. So being a welder was okay, was fine with me. And then I was working at a restaurant as well, using my culinary arts degree. And then I started doing criminal justice reform work. But yeah, so when you have a felony conviction, as you just said, we have over 600, 700,000 people that are released from some type of detention into the community every year. And if you have a felony conviction, there's over 44,000 restrictions against somebody who has a felony conviction. So not only do people not want to hire you, but then there's things where certain places you can't work, certain certifications you can't get, certain licenses that you can't get either. And, then you place on that, you don't have a car, you might not have a place to stay. And it's just almost like a recipe for you to go back to prison.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Now, so then the pardon, you got that this fall. And so basically the pardon just removes that, correct?
Yeah. So the president has an extraordinary power, which is the pardon power. One is to commute somebody's sentence, which that releases somebody from any prison sentence, like if you owe a fine, restitution, the president can eliminate that or shorten it. Like in my case, he shortened my life without parole sentence down to 20 years. I still had a $8,000 fine that I had to pay, which I paid when I came out of prison.
How much?
8,000.
8,000. Which
Yeah.
that was pretty big. That probably felt huge, right?
Yeah, it did. But I was just happy to be out, right? I was just like,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
pay whatever, right? Just let me out.
Yeah.
And then he can give you a full presidential pardon, which doesn't exonerate you, but it eliminates all your convictions. So right now, if I don't have the education, but if I had the education and I wanted to apply for a job as an attorney, as a principal, as a police officer, they wouldn't be able to use my federal convictions to say that's why we can't hire you. Obviously, I can. I'm normal as probably just as any viewers that are watching right now. Like I can leave the country when I want. I can go to, I can own a gun if I wanted to. So there's just I've been made whole again, I guess you could say. But I would say for me, when I came out, and as you mentioned earlier, I was people that were kind of not wanting to be around me or hire me. I had this executive order of the president, right? Of those 700,000 people who are released from prison every year, how many of them got that, right? Probably 1%, if not less than that. And so that was able to open up a lot of doors for me. It was able to, people who were apprehensive of me, it knocked those walls down, and even made people want to help me, right? Because you have people who are for second chances like yourself, who understand like all we need is a second chance. So with President Obama's name attached to me, I don't know where I would say I wouldn't be in prison right now, without a doubt. I would not have resorted to any type of crime or drug dealing. But I don't know if I would have this, if I would be, as I tell people, once I was a federal prisoner 07, 031, 078, and now I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit, La Tiendita, which helps keeps our kids out of prison and reach their full potential. Would I be able to say that now had I not had President Obama by my name? And I just think about what does it take, that paper, right, for people coming out? Because you can't get that paper from the President of the United States. It's hard to get. But how can you kind of replicate that, mimic that to where people are welcoming of you and not, don't want you in the facility?
Okay, so the whole premise of this today was talking about, we've got a lot of viewers who are in recruiting and HR, so second chance hiring programs. So let's talk about kind of the employer side and then the employee side, right? So let's first off on the employee, what are they feeling, and how can people help them, prepare them for the workplace? Like what could organizations do, whether it's a nonprofit like your own who takes care of people in their community, or a large organization that wants to reach out to this community and kind of prep them for the interview process? What needs to be done for them?
Yeah, well, so right now you say the word organization, and I always kind of correlate organization with like nonprofits organizations, or I connect organization with some type of criminal enterprise, right? I think that's just my upbringing. A lot of people wouldn't have that same.
Thank you for defining that. So let's start with, first off, for this, there are nonprofit organizations, there are government organizations, there are, community organizations like churches, and then there are employers, right? So we'll just kind of separate them out like that, right? So all of those there might be a group at a Fortune 100 company that wants to reach out to this community. There might be a local church that wants to help. What kind of things are you doing for people re-entering the workforce that these people could consider as well?
Yeah, well, and I'll go back to the organization part, right? Think about gangs, think about drug distribution rings. And even when I was out here and I was recruiting, when I was a drug dealer, I was recruiting people to hold my drugs, to deliver my drugs, to pick up my drugs, to sell my drugs. And you have to recruit, because there's other people that are also in this business trying to recruit talent as well, because it's not easy to to sell drugs. So what do we do? What do the gangs do, right? It's more than just a business relationship, right? It's personal. What do you need? What's going on in your life right now? Well, my car don't work. I don't have a car. Our rent's low. I mean, our rent's due, and we don't have the money, uh, or they don't have food to eat, right? So we, as a drug dealer, and not just kind of to recruit people, but just trying to be a compassionate person and share the wealth, I guess you could say. Uh, People who sold for me, or if people who are gang members, they show it's a false, and again, it's kind of like it's this false love, right? Where we're there for you, we want to help you, we'll help your family out, and that goes a long way. You get a lot of loyalty from people in that world, right? They'll go to prison for you, they'll commit violent acts for you, and that's something as simple as paying their light bill, right? Putting food on their table, helping them with their rent, buying them a car. So if you could take those practices on what lures these young kids to completely abandon their future for these false, fake, deceptive causes, if you could utilize just some of those for your business, right? If I'm coming out of incarceration, obviously I don't probably have a place to stay. I don't have a car. If I do have a car, it's probably not in the best condition. So along with not just giving me a job, find out more about me. Okay, you just came out of prison. Treat me like you would treat your a family member, not just like an employee. We have this car system where we can lend you or loan you a car with maybe even the option to buy. You still have to pay for it. So that way I do have transportation to get back and forth from work. Where are you staying at? Maybe we can assist, find it, not maybe paying for it, but maybe we can find you a location, help pay your rent or half the rent for the first 2 or 3 months. But then after that, you're on your own. When I got that job from the first person that was running that welding place that was hiring nothing but felons, I had told him, they paid $12 an hour, which is extremely low, even at that time for a welder. And I told him, look, just let me work for 2 days. You don't even have to charge me. You don't even have to pay me. Let me just show you my worth. And I think that right there, I think he was going to hire me anyway, but he was like, he didn't have to think anymore. He was like, I'll pay you. You're hired. So I think maybe if you're going to hire somebody and you're kind of cautious about them, we're on probation parole already, right? Put us like on a probation parole period. Like, you know what? We'll hire you for 2 days. You won't maybe not get the same pay that you're expected to, but after those 2 days, if you show your worth that you are dedicated to helping our business and kind of create that culture, right? Then you hire them full time. And I think that would go a long way with employee retention, commitment, and just everybody in life wants to be part of something, wants to be acknowledged, and wants to, have that self-worth. And I think it's just helping out employees. I think that can go not just for people coming out of prison, but just any employee in general.
Mm-hmm. It's something that you shared with me. You had Time Magazine, you had a presidential order. You told me that you help people kind of tell their story for an interview. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, everybody obviously can't get magazine coverage in a presidential order. So how can you help these people tell their story, and like what kind of questions do you ask them, and how do you kind of prep them like that?
Yeah, well, I think for me, and I think people that are incarcerated are some of the most amazing, extraordinary, intelligent, charismatic individuals I've ever met were incarcerated, right? And they use those skill sets and those talents to do criminal activity. So for me, every time when I'm whether working with a volunteer like your mother, or somebody that's coming out of the system, or one of these kids in our community, I always just try to find out what are your skill sets, what are your talents, what are you passionate about, and then trying to figure out once you find that, and then how do you utilize that again, not to only better your family and your life and your career, but your community as well. Because I think that once those, again, it's about purpose, right? Once you find that purpose, it's what gets you out of bed every day, right? It's what makes you go home and not stay out all night, right? Go to sleep on time. That commitment that you have something to live for, that we all have been placed on this earth for a reason. We just got to find it. And then when you find it, what do you utilize it to again, change better or save someone's life. So for me, that's one of the main things that I've always asked, especially for people that are coming out of prison, because you're trying to find purpose, trying to put them on a regime, because you have to think the best time to hire somebody is when they straight come out of prison. Because at the prison that I was at, we wait. I mean, at 4:30, you're up. You're kind of almost like
you're not sleeping through your shift. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not sleeping. Like you're open up at 4:30, and you got places that you got to be. Your life is very, very structured. We get out of prison where we don't have a car, we don't have a job, we're lollygagging, we're floating through the earth. So for 18 years when I came out, I had this very structured life. If I could have jumped into something real quick at a job like that, it would have just kind of kept me going. So we start wandering, right? And it's just, getting those individuals back on their life again, right? So when people come out, I always ask them, what do you want to do? What could have you done if you would have never been to prison? Or what would you like doing? Are you good with your hands? Do you like talking? Can you create things? And then I connect them with people who have jobs here, who are always looking. And they tell me right now, they're like, look, Jason, in this workforce right now, if they show up when they're supposed to, leave when they're supposed to, if they're not on their phone all day, and if they're not vaping all day, we'll teach them, even if they don't know how to do it, as long as they're committed. Like, that's kind of like you said, the workforce is so short. And again, I think there's so much talent in our prisons. It's just giving them that second chance, but then also helping them as well, giving them those needs that they need so they can get back on their feet, not take care of them for the rest of their life, but look, we're going to give you the tools that you need to succeed. But then after that, you got to carry your own weight.
Yeah, no, and I keep going back. I'm sure some people's brains exploded when you started explaining the correlation between being a recruiter and running a drug enterprise. So that was a great moment. But I will say, you mentioned charisma. Some of my favorite people growing up were involved in your case. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember in the late 90s seeing it, different names come across the newspaper, right? And I was like, whoa, But yeah, it is just a false reality that people start chasing, and the loyalty and the community that they were involved in. But yeah, no, Jason, if you had to, and we're nearing the end here, but if there was one thing that you would tell, well, okay, let me preface this, right? First off, the people watching this are all in talent acquisition and HR, right? And second chance hiring initiatives are something that have been implemented at some of the largest companies. JP Morgan has hired over 2,000 former felons and put them in the workforce over the last couple of years. And it's something that is working, and there's a lot of research behind it. It's not easy to do, right? It's there are compliance concerns. There's risk in terms of insurance concern. There's a lot of that an HR leader would have to walk through to implement a program like this. So if anyone needs help in doing that, let us know. The other thing is that if you want to do this and if you want to make it successful, you have to prep the hiring managers how to interview these people, how to see the good in them, and how to understand what will help them have purpose. And then you have to help the people, who don't have a Time magazine and don't have a presidential order. If you're the recruiter who sees something in them, you've got to help them package their story for that interview. Right. So there are a lot of sides to making these programs work successfully. And I'm hoping to dive into those in the next couple of weeks with HR leaders. So with that in mind, Jason, what would you say if you could tell every HR leader in the US something? What would it be? What would kind of you've got this opportunity to tell people in a position to make this happen. What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, I would say one, we talk about second chances, right? And I look at it as what do we do at La Tiendita, right? We give some people a second chance. Sometimes we give people their first chance. Sometimes we give people their only chance, right? And we know that at our nonprofit, if our kids don't make it, right, what does that mean? They get involved in gangs, they get involved in drugs, they might be killed, they might go to prison, they might become addicts. So every decision that we make here, it's important. It's a nonprofit. If you look at it, we're like this cute little cuddly store, but at the end of the day, to me, these are life and death situations that we're dealing with. And I look at everything that we do like that. So I think to the HR people in here, right, when you turn somebody down like me, like what are you actually doing to that person? Because I've already been rejected so many times, especially from, even like trying to find a partner. Like nobody wants to go out with you because you've been incarcerated. Nobody wants you around their kids because they think that you're going to do something to their kids for some reason. And then you're just beat down, right? And giving that person that opportunity, believing in them, and like I said, even if you hire them, put them through a program, right? Whether that is, if you want to put them through anger management classes, social skills, etiquette classes, hold them accountable, right? I'm not just saying just open the door for us. Yeah, we did a crime. We shouldn't be punished for the rest of our life for that, but we still do owe for that, right? And then when you're incarcerated, you do experience certain things. A lot of that needs unpackaging, a lot of unraveling. But at the end of the day, we're human just like everybody else. And whoever's watching on here, we always hear about that person that says, I'm self-made. But that's not the case for anybody. Everybody, whoever you are, somebody has given you a chance, a second chance. Somebody's believed in you, whether it was your teacher, your current or former employee, a friend, that sometimes all we need again is not only our second chance, but just a first chance.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think Jason would be a fascinating study in leadership. Jason's been a leader his whole life when he didn't even realize he was a leader, right? And then that led to leading a lot of different things, right? So one got him put in prison, then he gets out and he's running this nonprofit. I will say, for anybody who lives in the Dallas area, McKinney's a great place to visit anyway. And if you head to McKinney, go check out La Tiendita. I was there one day. It's right next to the elementary school where Jason went, and it was about 3:00, and we were talking, and Jason just stood up, and he kept talking. He was polite, but he walked outside and he just started setting up for when school got out. So when school got out, kids were walking by. Jason's giving them snacks. He's asking about their day. They do cooking classes. Jason, are you in the house next door right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so where Jason is a small house where actually a family member of his used to live, next door to La Tiendita that the nonprofit has bought, and they do cooking classes in there. They do all kinds of things in that location. So if you are in the DFW area, it's a great place to visit. So La Tiendita. Jason, is awesome to see you today and hear your story and share it with this community. I've been watching it online since he came out. So, and everybody, Jason said he was in, if you think about when he was arrested, 98, what year did you get out?
2015.
All right, let's just celebrate. He's doing a StreamYard hangout being streamed on LinkedIn with no technical issues. So, I mean, I think we're all nervous jumping into one of those, regardless of how much you're a digital native. So, Jason, it's awesome to see you. Thank you for everything, and thank you for what you're doing in East McKinney. You guys, it really was in the 90s a relatively dangerous place and a neglected place. And when you go now, not just La Tiendita, but they're just wedding venues right down the street. I mean, it's really been revitalized. It's really inspiring to see. So, so if you're in the area, go see Jason. He's there most days. And once again, Jason, thanks for your time.
No, thank you. And if y'all want to find out more about what we're doing here, you can Google Jason Hernandez, La Tiendita, McKinney, and you'll see all type of articles that have been written about us. As well, anybody, if you want to reach out to me, Facebook, LinkedIn, would love to network. And share any information that I have to help you help others.
Jason, you've been doing a lot of public speaking, right? Since you got out?
Yes.
All right. So I think everybody here can tell that he's a great speaker. He's, I've seen pictures of him speaking at the White House, Kamala right next to him, so yeah, if anybody wants to engage Jason, I know he's really busy. So if he doesn't respond as quickly on LinkedIn, message me and I'll give him a nudge. But yeah, he would be a great person to have at any event where you think his story could benefit your cause or what you're working on. So thank you all for being here, Jason. Thank you so much for your story.
Thank you all.
All right.